Welcome back to Thisday Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. With me in the studio, I still have Professor Victor Ariole, Professor of French and Francophone Studies at the University of Lagos, Dr. Ndidi Nwaneri, Public Policy Consultant and Visiting Scholar, Loyola University, Chicago, and Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough. Well, thank you all for showing up this Sunday. Well, let me start with you, Yemi. You know, this week on Wednesday, we had this surprising development. Oh, we don't have Yemi yet. Okay, let me come to you, Dr. Nwaneri. This week we had this interesting development of the United States through U.S. Trade Representative throwing his weight behind calls by India and South Africa for the waiver of the trade-related intellectual property rights for COVID-19 manufacturing. And that has become very controversial. You have Russia saying, okay, they are backing it, but you have Germany saying this is unacceptable. You have the European Union through Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission, saying that, well, the EU will look at it. But 100 nations are supporting the proposal, and the whole idea is that, well, this will ramp up production of vaccines and also ensure vaccine equity. But the big farmers are saying this will discourage incentives for profit. And we had Lekon Asuni there, a pharmacist, former managing director of GSK in Nigeria, looking at some of those issues. And we raised the big issue. Even if this were to pass through WTO negotiations, do we have the capacity in Nigeria and also in Africa to produce vaccines? Dr. Nwaneri, good to see you again this week.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And I always accuse you, Doctor, of setting me up and asking me questions that we all have an idea of what the answer is. So I'm going to start from the beginning. First of all, we run a capitalist world. That means that if I invest $100 or 100 naira a year ago, I have an idea of how much it's going to yield. Now, you do not assess something outside of where it happened. Let me explain myself. So if I'm investing money in research and development, I have an idea of how much I'm going to get out of it. That is the argument of Big Pharma, that you don't change the rules halfway through. Now, as pharmacist Asuni mentioned, he said that, you know, most research and development comes from the private sector. So I'm going to take your question one by one. On the one hand, on the side of the pharmaceutical manufacturers, they come in with a certain intention. They invest a particular amount of money. Halfway through, you tell them that you're not going to protect their property rights. It's a bit weird. It's a bit odd. Now, and there's an extent to which they can argue that it's not fair, you know, because they have done all of this work, and how do you protect their interests? Now, there's another school of thought that says that, pharmacists, pharmaceutical companies, you guys make so much money. You make so much money that there's no way this is going to harm you. You're not going to become destitute or shut down your organization because you helped the world get through COVID, that you lost some money by doing that. So I totally agree as well with Okunjo Iweala that the thing that separates you or me from infection, so long as there's one infected person on the face of the earth, it is only time that separates me and me from getting infected. So we're all in this together. So we might have to shake around the rules a bit. Now, with regards to access and expansion of production, because these rights have been waived, who are we talking about? If we're talking about Nigeria, Dr. you and I know that it is not that we lack human capacity. It is not that Nigeria is not capable of producing, but it is that we run a dysfunctional political system. So you and I know that it is not going to happen, because these are not things that happen in 3 months. You cannot start manufacturing vaccines by decree. You need an environment where, if money, for instance, is invested into it, you don't have a situation where the money disappears. And you and I know that in Nigeria, so long as that money can disappear, it will disappear. So our own problems are totally different. But in terms of whether or not this is positive, yes, it is positive. We're in the middle of a pandemic. It is a global pandemic. We have to shake the rules a bit. Last point I'm going to make about this is the bigger picture. If you're running a capitalist world and a system of distribution based on the principles of capitalism, governance within a country like Nigeria should take that into consideration. There's such a thing as insurance. In our homes, we all buy big bag of rice and we plan that we'll use it till middle of the year. Then before the year ends, before rice becomes expensive, we'll go and buy another rice and keep in our house. We plan our lives. So I don't understand why Nigeria was not prepared, and from all indications, has not set up measures to protect from the next pandemic. So the reason why we have a state and the sovereign state is not because of flag and national anthem. It's because we have to be ready for shocks. You can't prepare for the future completely, but you have to be able to prepare for shocks. So what I want to ask Nigeria is, how prepared were we that, for instance, anything could happen? Were we prepared? And now that this has happened, to what extent have we learned our lessons? In terms of the waiving of the intellectual property rights, you and I know, from where I'm sitting, I don't think we'll start manufacturing. But maybe it will expand production around the world. But it will make pharmaceutical companies lose money, but they're big boys. They can make money later. So that's my position. Thank you.
Okay, very quickly, we have less than 2 minutes to go. Let me come to you, Professor Ariole. I probably will come back to you. Do we have the capacity, even if we're given the advantage of technological transfer?
Well, we have the capacity in terms of human capacity, but infrastructure-wise, I doubt it. And I expect both Nigerian business concerns and the Pharmaceutical Association, headed by Mazio Muhabunwa, for example, to start talking about keying into the intellectual property waiver that America is trying to give out to the world. And if it is not done, then it means that both of us, both the private sector, even the university and research areas of the Nigeria and business concerns in Nigeria seem not to be serious. They seem to be lagging behind like the government. So I was once in a University of Georgia, Athens, and I was meant to know that, you see, U.S. government is involved in all that goes in vaccine production or research. And they were asking a particular professor who took money from the big farm in advising them to reduce his costs. Okay. Because the government was involved.
Okay, Professor Ariole, I'll come back to you. Let's take this quick commercial break. And when we return, we'll come back to Professor Victor Ariole. Stay with us. We'll be right back. This is Live, the Sunday Talk Show. Welcome back to This is Live, the Sunday Talk Show here on the Arise News channel. Still with me here in the studio, Professor Victor Ariole, Professor of French and Francophone Studies at the University of Lagos, Nigeria, Dr. Ndidi Nwaneri, Public Policy Consultant and Visiting Scholar, Loyola University, Chicago, United States, and Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough. Well, Prof, you hadn't finished your point
really,
before we moved on.
I'm still worried that the lesser ones in this world are not looking at the big players like United States and its allies. When 2012, they decided to make Jim Yong Kim the World Bank president. And it was based on his developmental capacity, or what they called, as a physician and anthropologist, he is well versed in producing a vaccine or developing vaccine. That's what I had at the time, when Okonjo-Iweala was not favored at that particular time. And that is 2012. And I worry why people are not interested in knowing why World Bank will be interested in somebody who will be able to develop vaccine or talk about vaccine. That is 2012. Just as Dr. Waneri is saying, we are in a capitalist world. And you don't expect people to plan their investment 10 years ago, and at the point they are about to reap, and you are telling them, you know, you have to give up the intellectual property. And we know that Jim Young Kim was Obama's favored candidate and he won, but he started having problem with Trump. Trump that was worried about what the big firms collect as money or the profits they are making. Thank God that we have today Biden as the president, who is a Democrat, and who was brought into the space of presidency based on the coalition of people like AOC, I mean, who are so welfare-minded. You know, the Democrats of Bernie Sanders, them and whatever. The Congress is now favored. I mean, it's a favorable Congress for welfare dispensation, and so waiving intellectual property for the U.S.-based pharmacists will not be a problem for Democrats for now, because they expect to have the welfare of the world in their hearts, and there is nothing wrong in that. It's also the same thing as what we are talking about computer today and the software. When Steve Jobs was willing to give the computer to everybody, and it was a contest between IBM and Steve Jobs, and it still, for now, went to the way the Democrats wanted, to get the world to have a good bit of what America can produce and what America can do. And as I say, and as I said earlier on, there is no research area in US that the government is not involved. So the government is involved also in these vaccine production processes, either via any lab that is trying to develop it. Government makes effort to put its hands in. And I'm worried that the other world we are talking about, that's the developing world, are not keying in, are not understanding how best to key in and benefit from it. As we are saying, Nigeria ought to be thinking of how to place infrastructure that will help the other Africans, if not the whole Africa, at least West Africa, to profit from this particular waiver of intellectual property America has set in.
That has not been determined yet.
Yeah, but it's possible now. We can do that. And it's not, you can't talk about 60 or 65 days to do. So we should start thinking about it right now. You know?
It's a possibility. The WTO votes by consensus. It's not something that even the United States can determine. But what we know is that 100 nations of the world are in support. But even the senior medical advisor of the United States on infectious diseases is saying this may lead to litigation, because the big pharma, they could insist that, look, intellectual property is
but it can be compensated.
Well,
because for now,
who will compensate?
Of course, government for
at
now.
At what cost?
U.S. has reached its health immunity vaccination process. China has also reached. It's only European Union that is thinking to reach about in July, with 53 factories producing vaccines in Europe. They are still capable of, giving out those.
It's still a very dicey situation,
yeah,
because even in India, which has the largest vaccine production facility, what we're told is that they're having issues with raw materials.
Of course.
At the Serum Institute of India, which is the biggest vaccine production company in the world. But Yemi Adamolekun, I understand you are now with us. This issue about patent sharing of intellectual property, technological transfer, vaccine equity, vaccine diplomacy, and all of that can impact on solving the problem of getting a global herd immunity, if there is a phrase like that. We had a guest earlier. I'm sure you listened to him, pharmacist Lekon Asuni, former Managing Director, CEO of GSK Nigeria.
Yeah, I missed what he said, but good afternoon again. Well, I mean, the truth of the matter is that as I think he laid out, if I understood him, because, and that's the conversation we've had about COVID generally, more people die of malaria, more people die of tuberculosis in Nigeria than they've died of COVID every year. So the reason why it's called a global pandemic, and malaria is not a global pandemic because it affects both developed and developing countries. So in the interest of protecting your own interests, you then take an interest in how it affects other people. And that's literally what the US is doing. So yes, they're playing Big Brother, but they're also very clearly protecting US citizens and US interests. Now, what I was trying to get the numbers, but I couldn't get the accurate numbers. But part of the farmers were supported by the US government. So in this context, yes, vaccines are investment in R&D generally, not just vaccines, but R&D generally, drugs of all types, is by private investors. They raise money. So they find the money, they invest in the drugs, they sell the drugs, they make their money back with interest, and interest in multiples, which is, again, I guess NOI's point that you're a profit-making entity. So taking a loss, quote unquote, on this particular stream of income is not going to make you bankrupt. So let's think about it. But I think the context really that we hadn't discussed as much is the fact that they were supported in this process, especially the US ones, by the US government. So where does that play in this whole idea of who invested in the vaccine and who is expecting a return? Unfortunately, I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but if we had those numbers, I think for me, that would be a more interesting conversation. So let Johnson & Johnson come and say, look, it cost us $100 million to do this vaccine. The US government gave us $30 million. We took $30 million out of our profit, and somebody else gave us $30 million that we need to return back. So let's kind of have a more honest conversation about what this means in that regard. But yeah, because developed countries who would normally not care now have their skin in the game, we will have a more interesting conversation about how quickly we want to get rid of this virus.
Okay, thank you very much, Yemi Adamalekun. This has been all on the global stage with the destiny of the human race with regard to the COVID-19 pandemic. Let's come back home here to Nigeria. 27 students abducted by bandits on the Federal College of Forestry Mechanization, Kaduna State, have been released and reunited with their families. This came on the heels of protests by parents and relatives of the students at the National Assembly in Abuja. Initial reporting suggests that their release was facilitated by the Sheikh Ahmad Gumi Dialogue Committee with support from former President Olusegun Obasanjo. Arise political analyst Sumna Sambo reports.
While jubilation in the air as parents reunite with their children after about 58 days of being separated by the abduction of the students. It's a celebration of life here. Mothers hug and even back their daughters to show how much they've been missed as they welcome the students back from the captivity of armed bandits who made life torturous for them, with some students being injured.
Now go the Allah. I'm very, very happy. Thank God. I'm very, very happy.
Okay, what will you say about your experience and how strong are you now?
I really thank God for saving my life. I thank God for saving my life. I'm strong now. I'm very, very happy.
Yes. I'm very grateful. God has done it. There's nothing again. God has done it. We thank God.
I forgive them. We forgive them all. May God give them chance to change.
How happy are you to see your mom?
I'm very happy. I'm very happy.
So what were you thinking about your dear mom, your father?
I'm thinking, how are they feeling? So I even thought maybe my mom would pass away because of the shock, but I thank God.
Oh, okay. Were you allowed to continue studying here?
Yes.
By God, if there is security, when they put security, I will allow her to finish her school. But if without security, no.
After negotiations led by a Muslim cleric, Sheikh Ahmad Gumi, and some former heads of state led to the 27 students being freed, like the previous 10 students, Kaduna State government authorities and college officials are promising new security measures to safeguard the school.
Important. So as far as Kaduna State government is concerned, we will continue to do our best, and we are happy with this development. This is a victory for all of us. This is a victory for humanity, and we are happy with this. You can see the victims of banditry. They caught across different shades of life. So it means we have to come together.
Now that the students are back, before resumption, we will make sure that all the stakeholders are involved and all the necessary precautions are in place before we resume. The parents, I'm appealing to them to allow their students to continue and to believe that this is a turning point for the students, for the school. Let them allow their students to continue with their education.
What we are appealing to the members of the public. Criminals, they are in different fronts. They are in every tribe and every religion. So it's for the good ones to come together to fight them with a view to getting rid of them within our environment.
Student union leaders say the jubilation will continue for weeks as they welcome their colleagues back home. As the students reunite with their families, the Kaduna State government, alongside other security forces here, have urged each and every one to always take care of their personal security, saying that although the government will always do its best to secure individuals, nonetheless citizens have a very great role to play in their personal safety. Somna Sambo, Arise News.
Well, Somna Sambo there, Arise News political editor, reporting on the release of the remaining students of the School of Forestry Mechanization, who were abducted by terrorists for about 58 days and who have now been released owing to the intervention of Sheikh Ahmed Gumi and former President Olusegun Obasanjo, as we're told. But we'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll have the opportunity to reflect on this development and also express views about the remaining students of the Greenfield University, also in Kaduna State, who remain in captivity, and other Nigerian students who remain in captivity due to terrorist activities, and the implications for education, for national stability, and for the people's level of trust in the government. We'll be right back. Stay with us. The conversation will continue shortly. Welcome back to Thisday Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. I still have with me in the studio Professor Victor Ariole, Professor of French and Francophone Studies, University of Lagos, Nigeria, Dr. Ndidi Nwaneri, Public Policy Consultant and Visiting Scholar at the Loyola University, Chicago in the United States, and Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough. Well, Yemi, let me start with you. We just watched that video, the release of the remaining students who were abducted on March 11 from the College of Forestry Mechanization, later identified as the Afaka 39. 10 of them were later released, and now we have the others being released. The parents had to pay 17 million naira to get the initial 10 released. This time around, we're told that they were released based on the intervention of Sheikh Ahmed Gumi and his team and former President Olusegun Obasanjo. But the rub of it is a statement on Thursday by the governor of Kaduna State, Nasir El-Rufai, who said that, in fact, he had a strategy, a different strategy, which meant that, the military forces will have bombarded the location of the abductors, and if anybody died, it wouldn't have mattered. It would just be collateral damage. And many Nigerians are surprised that a governor who is a husband, who is also a parent, who has children, will say that collateral damage will not have mattered in any way. Over to you.
Right. It's quite interesting how Malam El-Rufai's position has changed from when the Chibok girls were kidnapped to now. And he has justified it and said with new information and new dynamics, then your position will have to change. But what I will say, though, is that even if his position has changed, there is something to be said for compassion, and there is something to be said for care. One of the things that the Bring Back Our Girls movement was always very clear about was that we don't know or have access to as much information as government does. So when we're asked, what do we think? What strategy do we think? Should the military go in? Should there be negotiation? What should happen? Our default position was always that because government has access to more information and know where different players come in, that we will leave that intelligence for them to sort out. But all we're here to do is remind them that girls are missing and it is their constitutional job to get them back. And it's the same thing as was for Chibok girls or any other person who's kidnapped in Nigeria. But actually, I'll come back to that in a minute. And any other group of people that are kidnapped is to remind government that it's your job to get them back. So I'm not quite sure why Malam feels that it's necessary to give the details of his strategy, including comments that will come across as very uncaring. Actually, not even uncaring, quite cruel, if I want to use that word, to tell a parent that, well, if your child dies, let's consider it collateral damage. It's an unnecessary comment, even if, I mean, the point of the matter is in any intervention that involves arms, so the bandits are armed, police is armed, the military is armed. So in any intervention, and I think any reasoning human being would know that might happen, but for it to come from an official as sort of throwing it in your face, that's what I plan to do, if anybody dies, deal with it, it's completely unnecessary. And again, it just speaks to the constant conversation around how our duty bearers don't particularly seem to care about how they come across or how they empathize with what's happening with the citizens. And this is also in the context of the fact that, I mean, I'm not sure, one of the newspapers reported, for example, that Malam has removed his son from the public school in the spate of security in Kaduna. So if you don't care about collateral damage, why is your son, if the report is true, as was alleged, if you don't care about collateral damage, why would you remove your son from a public school? So, and now the other bit of this, though, is the fact that we're hearing about all of this when groups of students or groups of people, I would say students actually, because it becomes quite famous, quite public, very quickly, are kidnapped. But we have people who are kidnapped every day in different parts of this country, who are unable to go to the police or who are unable to call the army, quote unquote, to help them out. Because one, there's a lot of distrust, too many cases of police being complicit. And so citizens are just forced to find ways to sort this out themselves. We saw it in the School of Forestry, as you just reported, 17 million by parents. The Greenfield University have their own scandal going on where parents used money collected or donated on behalf of all of them and used that to negotiate the release of her son. So, but this again just reinforces where there's a breakdown of law and order. And we're negotiating with bandits and we're saying that bandits are upset. So, as Victoria said earlier, some of these questions, we know the reasons why, but it is important to restate them and just keep reminding our duty bearers that, as they say, every day is for the, but one day is for the.
Well, on that note, let me come to you, Dr. Nwaneri. In all of this, what is established is that Sheikh Ahmed Gumi played a role. President Olusegun Obasanjo also plays a role. But President Muhammadu Buhari, who is currently the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, issued a statement saying that his government is pleased that this has happened. And he was appealing to the Ansaru group of Boko Haram that abducted the students of Greenfield University and who have been threatening to kill them, except they get a ransom of 100 million and an additional 10 Honda Boko Haram motorcycles. Now, I mean, what does this tell us? Have we now reached a stage where the presidency will be appealing to terrorists and be celebrating efforts by non-state actors? What do you think?
So I'm going to start from the end. Thank you for the question. So personally, I draw a distinction between the presidency and the president. Officially, it's the same, but unofficially, they're separate. So that the presidency makes a statement doesn't necessarily mean that the president said something. He has handlers, there are people that manage things on his behalf. There's delegation of responsibility as well. So now the presidency appealing or expressing joy that something happened.
Well, what I quoted
again,
is
I'm going to take that statement.
Hello, Dr. Wanere. What I quoted is directly from the president's Twitter handle. You know, it's from the president's Twitter handle, except you are saying that the president does not own his own Twitter handle.
He does own it. There's a sense legally he is responsible for it. But maybe this is splitting hairs because anything that comes out of the presidency should be attributable to the president. So I'll back off there. It's a very strange statement. It's a statement that comes across from an environment of incompetence because you do not appeal when something, remember, you're supposed to protect me, the citizen, from enemies within and without of the state. So that is a failure of responsibility. On the other hand, I'd like to, I agree with the statement that it is, yes, I agree with her that the statement of the governor of Kaduna State is a bit disturbing. It's utterly, now, it's the callousness of that statement lies in the fact that it was unnecessary. It wasn't necessary. Your internal strategy is not, you don't need to tell us about it, particularly. And then I also want to draw a distinction between a human being, an individual, and somebody acting in their official capacity. I completely understand that he has a state to run. I remember I've mentioned once on air that you do not make a statement like, we do not negotiate with terrorists, when you have been negotiating with terrorists for the last 15 years as a country. Now, the country can hold that position. It's not a position that you can hold unilaterally as a governor. I suppose that is the background. That position of, I'm not going to negotiate, because if I start negotiating, it will become a growth sector. Every Pop, Dick, and Harry will be kidnapped, and everybody will feel that kidnapping is lucrative. Unfortunately, we're already there.
Dr. Wanere,
it's now a growth sector.
Dr. Wanere, sorry to interrupt you. I'll come back to you. Let's take another short commercial break here on Thisday Live, the Sunday talk show. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to Thisday Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. As you have with me, Professor Victor Ariole, Professor of French and Francophone Studies at the University of Lagos, Nigeria. Dr. Ndidi Nwaneri, Public Policy Consultant and Visiting Scholar, Loyola University in Chicago, United States. And Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough. Well, before we went on that break, indeed, you were making some points before I interrupted you. If you may just go ahead.
So I was talking about the governor of Kaduna State's response and how he's managing the situation. While we're talking about compassion, we should also have compassion on leadership. The dysfunction that shows up in Nigeria sometimes affects every dimension of our lives. Now, I'd like to talk about the former head of state that intervened and Sheikh Gumi that intervened. I think my question is, to me, this is a symptom of degeneration. We have degenerated to the point where they have to intervene. I'm glad that they intervened. I'm glad that the students are out. But from a policy perspective, what did we actually gain as a society? Is there anything that happened with this last abduction that is going to stop the next one from happening? That is my question. We have created, or we have permitted, or we have allowed a growth sector. Right now, you and I know, I am not, you know, in Nigeria, we're very Pentecostalish. It's not my lot. Jesus will not permit it. God will not allow that kind of thing happen. But I think I have a healthy suspicion that there will be more kidnappings, there will be more abductions. Now, my problem with this entire situation is that nobody is talking about rejigging our local government areas. How come there's so many gray areas? How come there's so many areas in Nigeria that I can take 300 human beings into and nobody knows where we are? How? So I'm sorry, we have created an enabling environment. Then there's something I'd like to mention. I am not in the military, but please, my understanding is that every single piece of ammunition in Nigeria, in the world, has a serial number and can be traced.
Again.
I don't see the government going into the background and the roots of this problem and saying, you know what, we are going to address this problem. We don't care if it takes us 10 years, but we're going to address this problem such that it will no longer be in anybody's interest to carry a human being or 300 human beings and disappear with them. That conversation is not happening. So I'm sorry. I'm glad that there was all this jubilation and all this celebration, but it's all cosmetic. Again, I'm going to do the whole Pentecostal move, you know. I pray that, you know, by God's grace, it doesn't happen. Please, what is stopping everybody that was jubilating there from being kidnapped? Everybody that was standing around there. So we don't have, I don't see any long-term solutions coming out. And in a strange, twisted way, the governor of Kaduna State seems to be somebody who is moving in that direction. Because by saying that, you know what, we're going to blow all of you up if you try it again. At least he's making some sounds. Now, I'm not agreeing with him before people will carry placard and come to my house. But the truth of the matter is that he's the only one that I have heard that is saying anything that resembles creating a situation of deterrence so that it does not happen again. Now, if somebody knows something I don't know, they should please let me know. But the government of Nigeria, sorry, please try and come up with something that would deter people from going in that direction.
Okay, well, Professor Ariele, let me come to you.
Well, you know, they say when things get too tough, you see, that's when you know a real leader or a real responsible government, how they operate. It's not when we have a peaceful moment and whatever. Nigerian case is really disturbing, like she mentioned. Very, very disturbing, because the space of Nigeria is not up to 1 million square kilometers. I learned it's about 920,000.
About 956,000
So what makes it impossible to grade it and understand? Somehow I also get confused, because within this banditry circle or enclave, either, for example, the Green Spring Ode, people came out dead, agree. Does it mean there is no possibility of forensic investigation to pick the thumbprint of the bandits so as to use drone, for example, to check out where they are hiding? Or those people who came out from the Kaduna, from the Forestry, the first set that came out, does it mean nobody inspected their body forensically to understand whether they can pick the thumbprint of these bandits? Because as I know today, the moment you program that in a drone, the drone will be able to tell us where that person is. That's what is used in Yemen and other places to pick bad people. It's no more issue of bombing, just like Rufai is saying. You don't have to bomb everywhere. You study, you use forensic means to study the imprint of the people and find a way to detect where they are. So I get worried about it, as she's saying, and I don't expect the president really to come in, because Twitter handle and all these things, as it could be faked. Seriously, I expect it to be a fake Twitter handle from the presidency, whether right or not, because it's my president. I get worried. How would president be tweeting to bandits and whatever when he has the control of Nigeria and he can send people anywhere to bring down anybody who is messing up with Nigeria? So I'm not very comfortable with the presidential tweeting anyway. And I expect something to be done so that this kidnapping will come to a close. I know that there are possibilities for something to be done. And Nigeria is bordered by only that section, Niger Republic. At worst, they will enter into Zamfara forest. So why not have a blockade of those? But even if you bomb and those people operating inside the tunnel, the bomb will have no effect. I'm only worried if there is no tunnel that links those forestry into Niger Republic. These are something that ought to be investigated so that we don't keep on wasting our time talking about less than 1 million square kilometer land that a whole Nigerian forces, 400,000 soldiers, and about also 400,000 police could not really come out to say, look, this is what our scientific investigation had proved. We have to know about
I get your point very clearly. This week, President Muhammadu Buhari had 2 National Security Council meetings. On Friday, he also met with the Presidential Advisory Council on the economy. And one major point that he made at that Friday meeting was that, look, what we need is a bottom-up approach. In other words, he says all of us have a role to play in making sure that Nigeria is secure and safe. Well, whatever support anybody can provide, I think that will be welcome, and that's why the intervention of non-state actors in the release of the students of the Afaka school may probably be something that we all need to reflect upon. But let's move on to the next subject. The presidency has raised an alarm over a plot to overthrow President Muhammadu Buhari. Special advisor to the president on media, Femi Adesina, claims religious and past political leaders are working with external forces to change the government, canvassing leaders of several ethnic groups and politicians to pass a vote of no confidence on the president, which will only throw the nation into further turmoil. Meanwhile, the Nigerian military has warned politicians and military personnel against planning a coup. The warning came after a senior associate of Nigeria, Robert Clark, called for a handover of power to the military for the purpose of restructuring. The military has dissociated itself from the statement and described it as anti-democratic, pledging its allegiance to the current administration while threatening to deal with anyone who contemplates an overthrow of government. Well, before I invite you, Professor Ariole, to lead the discussion on this subject, let me make it clear that here in Arise News, we are unequivocally clear. No role for military in our system of democratic governance. The policy in Arise News is that military rule is an aberration. Over to you.
It's worldwide. There's an aberration. See what Myanmar is suffering for a good long time. People are worried. It doesn't happen. In West Africa, where we belong, and we have seen how, relatively peaceful and progressive Senegal has been. It has never been on any military rule. Even Cameroon, our bordering nation here, has never been on any military rule. Cote d'Ivoire, partially. And they sent away Robert Gueye when he came into and wanted to occupy the presidency in Ivory Coast. So nobody is interested in military rule. And when you mention Robert Clark, who I learned is a British man and partially Nigerian man.
No, he's a
British Nigerian.
No,
yes,
he's a Nigerian.
Yes, he said the father is a British man, the mother is an Hausa woman, according to what I learned. So the possibility of the brainwave could be there.
You are mischaracterizing.
No, I'm not.
Robert Clark.
That is what I read in Thisday. Thisday, I read it in Thisday, that his mother is a Hausa Fulani and the father is a British man, but raised by a Yoruba person. That's what I read there. So somehow, that kind of psychological problem could still be there.
No. Let's avoid ethnic characterization.
No, I'm not saying that. This is what I read. It's not me.
Okay.
Yes, this is what I read in
but
this
I want
day.
your opinion.
Yes.
I don't want ethnic
My
profiling.
opinion is that there is nothing like military rule, and it will not happen in Nigeria. I get worried also when people from the presidency are mentioning such a thing. Nobody is interested in military rule, and that is why we have seen some relative progress since we started no matter what, since 1999 we started our democratic process. They haven't. True, we have problems, but we don't expect to go back to Egypt. That's going back to Egypt, thinking of going back to Egypt. There is no need for such a thing. And the military should stay where they are. They are to man our borders, and our borders are now suffering from infiltration of Boko Haram from Chadian corner and from the Niger corner. They should really stay there and tell us who are the bad people coming into Nigeria and stop them from coming into Nigeria. Outside people will be interested in getting Nigeria dislocated or dispersed or even disintegrated, we know, because that is the heart of Africa. Nigeria, whether we like it or not, and we should be thinking along that line. If we have a stable Nigeria, why won't Africa progress? And this is what everybody, even other Africans, should be thinking about. Imagine 200 million Nigerians being dispersed. I mean, where are they going to go? And how will it be for the whole Africa? Of course, many people will run away from their own country. We will overrun Benin Republic, we will overrun Cameroon, we will overrun Equatorial Guinea, even inside the water there. So we don't really expect any military coup. And I expect responsible people in the presidency to stop, engaging in argument that goes in line with saying there is a military coup. The parliament can sit down and raise issues about the president's performance. There is nothing wrong in it. Even if they present table vote of no confidence against the president, it doesn't mean the president will be removed. APC is still in charge of the parliament, so there is no issue. They should allow the opposition, even if they decide to say they are going to pick informations or bits of information of how the presidency has breached the Nigerian constitution, they should be allowed. It's their duty. Let them table it and let's see how it's going to go. But it doesn't call for military rule or military overthrow of the government at all. Nobody is interested in that. Nobody.
Okay, Prof, we have less than a minute before we go on break, but we should take that break now. Commercial break here on Thisday Live, the Sunday Talk Show. When we return, Yemi Adamole can be on standby. I'm going to come straight to you. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Thisday Live, the Sunday Talk Show here on the Arise News channel. Still with me in the studio, I have Professor Victor Ariole, Professor of French and Francophone Studies at the University of Lagos, Nigeria. Dr. Ndidi Nwaneri, Public Policy Consultant and Visiting Scholar, Loyola University, Chicago, United States. And Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director in Office and all. Yemi, I said I was going to come to you straight on this matter of calls for resignation, return to military rule. You having been one of those persons in civil society who fought for the return to civilian rule in 1999. These calls for the dissolution, the abandonment of the democratic process must be something of a personal concern to you.
It's also quite, what's the English word now, which escapes me? It's really the pattern. So we have a system of government that doesn't seem to be working. People think another one would work better. And especially within the context of insecurity. It's understandable, let me put it that way, why people think that having a military government would be better. And also, let's not forget that quite a number of people don't remember living under military rule. So it might sound ideal in a way. But I think within the context of also a country that doesn't educate its citizens on governance, on understanding the difference between military rule, what a democracy is meant to do or be, also slightly understandable. But I think most important really is that it's a vote of no confidence in Mr. President. That no matter how you dice what that call is and if you like it or not, the underlying reason why that call comes up is that there's a vote of confidence in Mr. President, General Buhari, that you are not doing anything. You are not present. You don't speak. Your citizens are being kidnapped. There's wide insecurity from north to south. But as you were quoting him, what your Twitter handle comes out to say is you appealing to bandits to please. EIE has a weekly newsletter, and our newsletter today actually or on Friday, actually referenced that. And I actually wanted to read what the quote from that was. But anyway, it more importantly just shows that people have no confidence in Mr. President. And it is a point. There's a statement by over 120 CSOs that went out today, basically also calling on the National Assembly. The Constitution does make it very clear what provisions exist to impeach the president. Look, and it's okay. We understand that you are old. You could be tired. And Nigeria is a lot to deal with. If you come out and say, you know what, I wanted to be president. It was a lifelong dream. I've done one term. This second term, you people, your wala is plenty. It's okay. I'm going to go retire to Katsina, mind my 100 cows, and go. Nobody is going to say anything. Maybe Twitter will abuse you for a week. They might even clap for you. But then you'll be gone. And then maybe history will be kind to you. But let me read this. Actually, it's very funny. President Buhari, in a rather laughable tweet, made an appeal for the release of kidnapped victims in Nigeria. Our question is, to who is the president appealing? To an authority higher than his office or to bandits in Nigeria? This goes to show you just how much of a joke our chief of armed forces is. And so that, I mean, we said that both as facts, as sort of and a jibe at Mr. President and his handlers. That how can you tweet something as the president and the chief of Nigeria's commander-in-chief of Nigeria's armed forces appealing to bandits? I mean, just it doesn't make sense in a lot of ways, least of it in what it communicates to citizens about how seriously you're taking the state of insecurity. And lastly, I think it is significant that any time that sort of thought comes up, the army feels that it's important for them to issue a statement about their allegiance. They did it during NSAS, and they've done it now. And what is always interesting about their language and their choice of words is that they always pledge allegiance to Mr. President. I'm sorry. I would think that your allegiance should be to the country. Mr. President is a man, a human being who was elected into office. Your first priority as members is that you swear an oath to Nigeria, just as Mr. President swore an oath to protect Nigeria. But again, in actions, we kind of see what people are thinking.
Okay, very quickly, Dr. Nwaneri, your thoughts?
It's my question to the person that made the announcement is what is my action point as a citizen? I mean, like, okay, so a bunch of people are thinking about overthrowing the president or the presidency, and what am I supposed to do? Like, what actions am I supposed to take? Why are you telling me? Like, aren't there systems in place to protect? So if the DSS knows about it, by now you should be making arrests, you know? So there's something unserious about the messages that come out of the presidency. So we're all adults, we all have jobs, right? And in our jobs, we have checks and balances. So that's the first question I'd like to ask the person that it came out, like, I think it was the press secretary. And I don't know what he wants me to do. You know, it would be nice for him to tell me what the action point is. The second thing is that maybe it sounded to me as if they were just protesting because, I mean, if you say anything in Nigeria, if you're from the wrong ethnic group, everybody decides that someone like me, I'm Igbo, right? Anything I say that is against the state is IPOB that sends me. Or if I'm speaking Yoruba, it's Afenifere that sent me, and, you know, but the presidency and the state of insecurity in the country is really disturbing. And less is be taken as a criticism of a president that came out of northern Nigeria. I think more northerners have been killed as a result of the insecurity than southerners. So we really do, we're approaching crisis point. So I think the body is biting whoever is speaking, because the first question you will ask if you dropped in from outer space and you saw what was going on in Nigeria is, the first question is, where's the leadership? And this is a failure of leadership for us to be in this state. And maybe that's why they're making all these noises and saying, oh, they're coming after us. Sir, if they're coming after you, you have the DSS. Have them arrest whoever wants to overthrow the government and stop telling the citizens how you do your job.
Wow.
That is my comment.
Yes, I get your comment and I get the other comments. But just to reiterate the point where we started from, which means here in Arise News, we do not believe in military intervention. Nigerians paid a heavy price to get to this point, whereby in 1999 there was a return to democratic rule. What we all need to do is to abide by the rule of law and for elected personnel to focus on the oaths of office that they have taken and to stay by that international convention, as Professor here was pointing out, that military rule is indeed truly internationally an aberration. And we all need to work together to move Nigeria forward. On that note, we'd like to thank you all for watching. You've been watching Thisday Live, the Sunday talk show here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abati. From our entire team here in Lagos, it's bye for now, and thank you very much for watching. We'll see you again next Sunday.